Hey guys, today is 11/11/2024, and it's Veterans Day in the United States. I think that may have played a role in why we didn't have too much action today. Not really a whole lot of gappers, not really a whole lot of runners either. Some old names as well, and yeah, I'll cover over everything here. Starting today, I'm gonna formalize the procedure a little bit with these, I guess, video DRCs to so I don't end up just like rambling on about random stuff that may or may not have anything to do with my normal DRC procedures. So I'm gonna be following a format that's a little bit more like basically this right here, and you'll see this in this format and all the remainder of my videos. So yeah, starting with the daily sentiment, I guess. With that in mind, as I mentioned earlier, it was kind of a bit of a slow day today. I didn't notice any particular patterns in terms of, in terms of frankly anything that was going on today. A lot of gappers, I suppose, were fading near the open. CERO was our top gapper, but looking at like some of the ones that were hanging around for a while, like SGN was pretty sideways for the majority of the pre-market. HOVR was up and down again, kind of sideways for the majority of the pre-market as well, and we didn't really have anything that was perpetually up, and only CERO was above 100%, and this thing kind of came at us in the last hour of the pre-market. So yeah, in general, the for the last week or so, I guess I'm starting to take notice is that we haven't had a lot of really low float gappers. A lot of the floats on the gappers that you see here are a fair bit higher than 5 million on average, and all of the runners as well have been much higher. FOXO being the primary culprit here has had like a float up above like 10 or 15 million, I believe, and we also had WeBuy as well. They had a pretty high float too. So it seems like we're in a cycle that's a little bit more preferential towards higher float stocks, but that's all right. It kind of sucks for runners because it means we get less overextension, and I'd imagine a lot of stuff is more predisposed to the sort of hyper manipulated, trappy up and down behavior that we've seen from Foxo lately, and that probably has something to do with as well why some of the stuff in the pre-market has been pretty sideways as well. So yeah. Uh, Outside of that, the election probably is lingering on impact. I haven't seen much of a change from it. There have been a couple of days where we've had multiple 100% gappers, but it hasn't been crazy. I'd say right now, crypto is becoming a theme, and Bitcoin hit all-time highs over the weekend. And today, some of the Bitcoin followers like Coinbase and MSTR as well. I'll go over take a look at them in a second. You're going to see these guys are up massively. And this is going to make for a really nice first red day at some point. I don't exactly know when. I don't trade first red days on stocks with like mega caps like Coinbase, but I'll certainly be watching this one. Tesla had its moment today as well. I know some people that were trying to short today on Tesla since this thing is getting pretty overextended, and I was considering a first red day play, but I've dealt with overextensions on Tesla. You can see some sim entries here where this thing can get really overextended, and it just doesn't put in a good first red day for like many days, as you can see here. And that's also been the case in some of its other big rallies in the past. Like you can see the red day gets put in up here, but it really curls over a little bit before it gets put in. So timing these Tesla tops is pretty challenging if you're looking for the first red day. So I completely disregarded today. I didn't even bother trading it. I was watching it, and it did not look great, to be honest with you. So maybe if we get a couple more gap ups, it'll be a little bit better, but we're not there just yet. And same thing with MSTR. This thing is going absolutely crazy. This is probably the hottest stock in the market right now, to be honest with you. And yeah, this thing is on the move, and it's going to continue being on the move if stuff in crypto continues holding up. And yeah, this thing's also poised for a first red day at some point as well. Maybe a little bit longer since we don't have any consecutive green candles yet, but I'll be watching it. It's going to be on my radar for sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of other things, although Coinbase and MSTR, just because they had really, really big days today, are the ones that were on the top of my list for like large caps. And it, of course, it tells me that crypto is like the hottest theme at the moment, aside from like the other lingering stuff we have going on, like like EV sector and like semiconductors still a little bit too in AI. So yeah, but definitely crypto stuff is going to be a hot watch. I'm going to be on the lookout for stuff associated with that. Yeah, and before I go into the tickers, I guess today wasn't a bad day for me. Broke even on the day. I made like basically nothing. I guess I didn't go red. I think I like the chump change I made ended up being the cost of my locates, so I didn't really make anything at all. And I only ended up taking 2 trades. I was gone for the majority of the afternoon. I had to head out for something at around like 11 a.m. EST, so I only ended up trading the morning. I ended up missing one of our only midday runners today, which if I can remember the name of it, was like BGS or something. It was this BCG guy here, this BNA Capital Group, was the only real big runner that we had in the midday. So I took some trades on CERO and FOXO as well, and that was it. That was all I did today, and I'll cover those trades in just a moment. I guess might as well get into the trade tickers now, huh? So I guess might as well start with CERO too. So this guy was the biggest gapper, bit of an anomaly compared to the rest of the stocks in pre-market, since it was the only one to have very little pre-market action. This thing popped up at about 8:15 a.m., as you can see here, and topped out pretty quickly. And into the open, I was looking for longs once we started to fail to hit pre-market high, and the trade I ended up taking on this thing was long. But before I get into the actual trade, just some stuff about like this ticker here. For starters, they had a lot of dilution listed, but almost all of it is like pending effect, or I mean, they got some SPAC and pipe warrants over here, but they've got like a really high exercise price. So you can see they've got some convertible notes, these things pending effect, got these warrants here pending effect, and this equity line is the only thing that's really super relevant dilution. But this stock is still dilutive, and it has a really strong fade history too. So I didn't see much of a reason to believe that this would not behave like your typical pump and dump low float. And yeah, things did get a little bit interesting from the news side of CERO, I think. They were doing like, they had some like, this pump was on like preclinical data or something like this. Yeah. Something basically like, I mean, preclinical data is not, even if they have even if it's something that's really anticipated, this of course does not warrant the like over 200% move it basically made. And yeah, so this thing was due for a fade, but despite that, we kind of went sideways all day. This was pretty manipulated, and like I said, I ended up taking a long over here, but there was something else also that played into this too. One last thing is they were scheduled for delist at the beginning of the month, and they did a hearing with the NASDAQ. Apparently they did Friday, and there's no information on the outcome of the hearing. I don't know if it's like a multi-day thing. To be honest with you, like, it's something I should really research, because I've seen a lot of these like NASDAQ hearings, like, company fails to meet like minimum bid price or market value requirements, and they'll appeal with a hearing, and then like the hearing happens. I don't actually see like what happens with the outcome too often, so I don't actually know the full procedure for that. But the hearing was supposed to be last Friday, which is assuming that it actually happened and concluded. This company knows what the outcome was, and this pump may have something to do with that outcome, or possibly maybe even like an exit pump for the SPAC warrants or something like that. Who knows? But yeah, so it was a little bit interesting. I thought maybe there was a chance we saw some action through the open on this, and I guess we did a little bit. The volume held up pretty strong for the first like 2 hours of the day, and I ended up taking a long trade on this, of course, like I said. Let me go ahead and I'll pull it up here. I forgot to take screenshots today, didn't I? All right, well, we'll just see them I'll just open them up in here. So, yeah, so once I saw volume stayed pretty constant, we had 2 new volume high peaks. I was looking to take a long entry in here, targeting pre-market high, maybe even a little bit higher than that. But But yeah, we got pretty wicky over here. I was limit set for half of my position to be out at pre-market high, which is what I did, and then I was looking to hold on to the other half to see if we would go higher. We did not. That was the highest point we made all day, and yeah, so very very lackluster trade. Not a lot. Did not get anything out of this really. It was I mean, I guess it was a win. It was just a really small win, especially on my longs when I'm taking them near open like this. I take half size just because I target really high risk to rewards, and this strategy has a slightly lower win rate. So it makes sense to like have less size per trade on these. And yeah, so only taking half of half size ended up being like not a lot of money at all. And didn't really touch this for the rest of the day. Nothing worth looking at on here. Sucks to have been someone who was short on this, I guess. Maybe if you held through all the heat, you took a win or something. This came back up for a rude awakening at the end of the day, but yeah, maybe some people bagged on short side. This was a tough fill up here. This was a spray. I just kind of got lucky with the fill up here, and so yeah, the only places you could have gone fill to the short side were probably somewhere in this general area. Probably this rejection right here, where I ended up having to exit out of my long on, and yeah, that's about it. This thing was, like I said, unusual. I'll be watching it tomorrow for some kind of continuation since we stayed high up in the range, and I'll be on the lookout for the hearing results. There's a non-zero chance this thing ends up delisting, and if it does, then obviously the short thesis is really going to get into play, and we might see some interesting things happen then as well. Yeah. So yeah, the next thing I guess I'll go right into and cover is FOXO, who somehow is still active in the market right now after doing two big moves, and here we are again doing another day of movement, and I still have no idea what this company's agenda is. All I know is the action on this stock is crazy damn manipulated. And today I tried it once to the long side. I was looking at this line right here that I had printed. I thought maybe we could wedge out a little, and I think I redrew it like this or something like that, and I ended up taking a trade over here when I saw, I think it was like 0.85 broke on like some big ask at 0.85 broke, I think it was, and I ended up taking a trade there. Can pull up the execution directly as well here. Yeah. And of course it did end up going higher, but it did this slow, super manipulated breakdown. You can see how often it got bought up. This thing was crazy, but it just, like, so many green knives on this thing. It took forever for it to actually manage to rotate, yeah. So I was not upset about taking a loss here. Again, this one was half size as well. I can take a little bit more size on this kind of trade. This setup is different from the one that I took earlier, since it's above pre-market high. And but I ended up taking half size as well because this was still dubious. I didn't like the idea that we were on day 3. I knew that, or I guess day 4 technically, and I knew we had a lot of bag holders, especially this price area right here. Like I saw us chopping back and forth, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, was this like a key level? Because these were the levels I had marked out, and I didn't have anything in this area. And I noticed, of course, going back to the day prior, we had this is the same area where we had this up and down chop basically all day. This general area right here, and red line for volume profile on my charts, and it was in the same area over here that we had this up and down chop, obviously an area where a lot of volume was looking to get conducted, and eventually we ended up breaking higher, and then we broke down again. And I don't really see the long setup here. This was pretty crazy. I don't frankly see the short setup either. If you had shorted off of this line that I drew right here, then you would have been in for a rude awakening, and it would have been so painful to see so many of these breakdowns fail. But I mean, you would have maybe pulled out some kind of win. Who knows? This thing was tricky. And of course, yet another day is ending the day up, and we are now like sitting static, I guess, at 0.66 up from wherever the hell we started, 1.4. So this thing's up many hundreds of percent now, but you can see how long it's taken to get there. This thing is just back and forth over and over again. So many fills, so many fades. It's ridiculous. Who knows what the friggin' agenda is on this thing anymore? Beats me. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when we break this level a bit above $1 over here. That's probably the only time I think I can reasonably play this short side at this point. Because or I guess, and for long side, it's almost a no-go entirely, because this thing is just, it's ridiculous. And the action continues to be manipulated. it continues to show this weird behavior. And let me quickly go, like, what was in the filings again for this thing? We have some, just the SPAC warrants, huh? It did have an SPA going at some point, but not anymore. Yeah. So, I mean, with just the SPAC warrants too, it's like, who's even orchestrating this pump? Like, why is this thing moving so much? This is so rare too, for us to see multiple big moves over the course of a few days, especially where we're not breaking highs. Very, very strange, yeah. So, it is what it is. If I see this thing pop up again, I might throw away the idea of taking longs entirely, unless we see maybe like exceptionally high volume. And even then I'll be half size. And then same deal with shorts. Shorts are going to be probably above the first day's high only. And again, only half size. Nothing better or nothing less than that. That said, with the one trade I did have on this thing today, I'm not super upset about it. I think it was worth a shot. The way I justified it in my mind was this thing obviously was wedging out. So I mean it was a setup that I'd normally take anyways, but more importantly, this thing was defying the reasoning of a lot of people who are probably of the opinion that this thing is an auto fade at this point. So I was basically betting on the squeeze, I guess is probably a good way to put it. Although I'm glad I only took half size, not just because I took the loss, but because this thing obviously has a lot of bag holders at this point. So certainly something I need to be careful of. Yeah. And for that reason, I think I'm about done with this thing if it does any more action. Yeah. Outside of that, HOVR and SGN were our two other, cover them both together because both of them were similar. They both had dilution, I believe, and they both faded right at the open. We got a pop over here, I guess, into this area where we had some volume conducted. Probably broke this high right here, and that was the place where we knifed off of. And then that was it for this thing. Don't really take shorts that are this far down from the pre-market high, and not particularly interested in taking stuff so close to the open either, so didn't trade this one. And then for SGN, this was like literally knife off the open, so didn't trade this one either. Both of these guys had dilution, and both of them had really sideways pre-market action too. Can't really say I know exactly why they would have faded off the open immediately, but it's not my wheelhouse. It's not my wheelhouse, so I'll mess with it some other day probably. And the only other thing that we had today, we had GovX. I wasn't around for this. This one was late in the afternoon. I guess just to quickly mention it, this thing late in the afternoon, not too interactive, not cool looking. I'm not going to talk about this just because I wasn't around to. I wasn't around to trade it. Didn't analyze it at all. I don't even know why they were up if they had news or anything. So, but BCG. These guys, I believe, did not actually have any dilution. They maybe had like SPAC warrants or something like that. And not a crazy fade history either. But a decently low float here. Pretty nice float, comfortable float to be trading. And yeah, they had some SPAC warrants and some convertibles that are not registered. So just SPAC warrants. And not really close to the price either for those to go break even. So yeah, nothing much from the dilution side, although with a heavily dilutive daily, we have like 1 or 2 days of run over here. It's always rejected though, especially with something being a midday runner, being this aggressive at the open, or being this aggressive near the beginning of the run. This was pretty well poised to be a good fade. I was not around to trade it, and honestly, it didn't reach the necessary overextension for me to take a trade. Which is kind of funny because this did like a serious like percentage based move. It did like 200% up. So And I still ended up getting a setup on it. But if we had gone like one hot candle higher over here on this like pseudo parabolic move, then I would have had an entry short off prior bar lows, and I would have absolutely milked this thing. But because we topped out where we did, it was just a little bit too close. This second leg here versus the size of the first leg was about the same. And for that reason, it just barely did not meet my criteria for sufficient overextension to trade this short side. So I wasn't around to trade it, and I didn't have any trade to take here anyways. I don't have any backside plays for these kinds of things. I like to catch them when they're near the top. That said, if I was watching the level 2 on this, and I will review, I have not reviewed the level 2 on this thing from when I was gone yet, but it's possible I had some kind of level 2 signal up here, in which case I probably would have taken half size up here, and I would have treated it as a normal trade just on half size. But I don't know. At the very least, outside of that, I did not have any setup on this. It did make a good move, though. Good to see midday runners with multiple legs making good moves. I always like that. And hopefully catch the next one that actually does sufficient overextension. Yeah. So it just ended up being then the CERO and the FOXO trades. FOXO loss canceled out the win from CERO, and that was it for my day today. So, yep. Hope you guys had a decent day, and I will be back tomorrow. Certainly looking at some of those larger caps for FRDs, and hopefully we see some cleaner runners from the gappers in the near future. It would be nice to see something actually run and not be hyper manipulated the whole way up. Just, maybe like a nice overextension or parabolic near the open, something like that. All right.